If you have a true scary story, especially any sort of Home Alone scary stories, consider sending them my way. Go to astheravendreams.com and click the button to do so. And of course, thank you. Hey Raven, I've been listening to your podcast for quite some time now, and I decided to share a story that revolved around me, but I didn't go through what happened in this story. Note that this story is going to be from the perspective of my mom, as she is the main person in the story, but will be told by me. This all happened when I was almost 1, but my mom remembers it in full detail. This takes place back in 2008, when my mom was working at a tanning salon. I was very young and didn't have a babysitter at the time, so my mom just took me to work so she could watch over me. My dad was working a different job and doing teacher internships at the time. I was a happy toddler for the most part, and I had blonde hair and blue eyes at this time. Apparently that was rare in 2008, but back to the story. I was always greeted with awes and compliments to me and my mom when she was working. I guess that she was used to it at this point, since I was there a good amount of time. One day when she was working, a lady came in and walked into the salon. My mom said that she had black hair, was a little petite, and that she looked Russian, almost, if that makes sense. Anyway, she goes over to the desk, asks questions and whatnot, and then she notices me. She compliments me and my mom talks to her a little bit before heading out of the salon. Nothing weird at all, my mom thinks. And that's when she shows up the next day and pays more attention to me than the day before. My mom thinks it's suspicious but shrugs it off as she does ask questions about tanning and whatnot. And this is where it goes from maybe to certain. For the next few days that my mom works, the same woman comes into the salon, pays all of her attention to me, and just leaves. I know what you're probably wondering. Did she get multiple tans done? Did she set up multiple appointments? Did she even set up a single appointment or even get a tan? Unfortunately, I don't have the answers to those questions, but I'll definitely see what my mom can remember in great detail. After a few days, the same woman coming into the store, my mom had 2 things going on in her head. 1, this woman is going to become a regular. And 2, this woman is sketchy and paying all of her attention to my son. As you probably guessed, she walks into the salon and pays more attention to me. She then turns to my mom with a questionable look and asks, "Can I take your son out to my car? I want to show my husband how beautiful he is." This confirms my mom's suspicions, and she stood in front of her with a defensive glare. "Hell no, you aren't taking him anywhere, you need to get out of here now." A few more comments are thrown back and forth, and the woman exits the salon furiously. By this point, my mom is shaken to her core and wonders what her intentions were to do with me. After a few days, and my parents finally getting me a babysitter, she learns the true intentions of what the woman had planned. But not in the way she could have imagined. It's morning of the tanning salon she works at, and she's set to open the store that morning. As she arrives, she notices a car pulling up in the parking lot of the tanning salon. My mom thinks that it's no big deal and that it's probably somebody who wants to get a tan done early. As she's unlocking the door to the store, the door of the unknown car opens and out walks the woman who tried to kidnap me. Not only that, but she is pissed off out of her mind and glaring at my mom with sick intentions. My mom bolts in the door, locks it, and hides behind the front counter. She's beyond scared by this point, considering that she has not seen that woman in less than a week in the salon. The woman approaches the door, screaming at my mom and banging on the entrance. "I know you're in there. I know you have him. Let me in." My mom couldn't breathe. This woman was actively trying to get to me and was only entering the salon just to see me. My mom, shaking and crying with fear, fumbles with her phone and calls 911. She explains the situation to the operator the best she can while holding back tears and her fear. All the while, the woman is intensely becoming more and more mad and violent. "I know he's in there. I know you have him. Let me in," were the phrases that she continued to scream at my mom as she was banging on the door violently to enter. She finishes her call with the police and calls her boss to explain what's going on. Struck with fear and nervousness and pain, she lets out all of her emotion on her boss, telling her that she's afraid, that she called the cops, and that her suspicions were correct. Her boss tells her to stay calm and wait for the police, and to not do anything else. As she's on the phone with her boss, she and the woman both hear faint sirens in the distance. The woman runs away to get in her car as the police turn down the street where the salon is located. She drives off, and my mom can see police cars chasing after the woman. This is where it gets crazy. The woman led the police on a chase throughout the Walking Mall parking lot for 5 minutes. During this time, though, the police made sure my mom was safe and stayed with her in the store to protect her, in case the woman tried to harm her, and they also called my father to explain the situation. As the 5 minutes pass, they finally stop her by popping her tires, and they stop the car. The police arrest the woman right then, and the husband as well, who was the driver of the car. A couple of minutes go by, they get arrested, and they give my mom the all clear. At this point, my mom is bulging tears from her eyes, not knowing what to think or what to do in this situation. The police ask her questions and she gives them statements to what had just happened. That's when she notices the car. She walks towards the car and notices 3 passenger seats in the back of the car. As she looks around, she sees 2 kids next to police officers asking them questions. One was a girl who looked to be 5 or 6 and had blonde hair and blue eyes. The second one was a boy who looked to be no older than 3 and also had blonde hair and blue eyes. She looks back in the car, and she sees 3 car seats, but only 2 children. That's when she realizes the middle one was made for a young toddler. She's hit with a wave of realization and starts bawling her eyes out at the thought, sight, and emotion of what just happened. Her boss and my dad both arrive at the scene to comfort her. A couple minutes go by and she asks one of the officers if she can talk to the woman. They say yes, but only for a few minutes. She walks up to her, tears streaming from her eyes, and a rage of emotion going through her head. I don't know what questions were asked, but one question sticks out so much that my mom can still hear it to this day. "What were you going to do with my son?" my mom asked. No response. "What did you plan on doing with him?" She responds in agony, trying to say sorry in her words. I was going to sell him on the black market." My mom's heart dropped. She couldn't believe what she had done. She let someone who had intentions to sell me for God knows what hold me and give me compliments. She burst into tears and fell on her knees, trying not to believe it. She couldn't believe it. All of her suspicions were true, but times 10. Minutes go by, and I guess that they took the car, took the woman and her husband to the sheriff's office, and closed the store for the entire day. My mom never heard anything about the 2 children, but she had her suspicions on if they were really the woman's children or not. I'm 17 now, and about to enter my senior year of high school. My mom always has a certain tone when describing this story to me, as this traumatized her tenfold. I still wonder what would have happened if that woman actually got me. I don't like to think about it much, but I just say that I wouldn't live to tell the story. If I had to give any message to future parents out there, I would have 3 things to say. 1. Trust your gut feeling if you feel suspicious about something. 2. Always be mindful of your children, no matter what the cost is. 3. Don't trust everyone you see, as some people could be nice at first, but have ill intentions to you, your family, or even worse, your kids. Thank you for letting me tell this story, as I did my best to recall what my mom told me. I know it may be on the long side, but I assure everyone reading that this is a story to read. Hello, Raven. I would like to share my scary dating experience from the past decade. I had been in a relationship and married for 22 years. As newly single for the first time in my adulthood, the dating scene surely had changed. It was time to download Tinder and start swiping. Anyone who has gone through a breakup or divorce knows how strange it is to start over all of a sudden. I had just moved to a small studio flat and I knew none of my neighbors. I went out quite often, most likely to ease the loneliness. One night, I was in a bar with my friends. They had never used online dating apps, so I decided to show how easy it is, especially for a female, to hook up. I went on Tinder, swiped, matched, exchanged a couple of messages, invited the match to meet up at the bar. He messaged, 20 minutes, and I'll be there. He was driving, so he declined to get into the bar for pints. I wasn't smashed, just a couple of drinks in. My friends stared at me in disbelief as I said my goodbyes and left. I met the date right in front of the bar, noted he was in fact sober, around my age, and fit. We exchanged compliments. He seemed alright, and we head off to my place, like two adults hooking up would do. Little did I know what was about to transpire. After a while, getting in the mood, dancing cheek to cheek, and taking our clothes off, this adult male started to argue that he does not believe in safe practices in adult activities. For me, keeping my health priority, I argued he should leave. I was, of course, a bit scared of the sudden turn in the situation, but he was not acting aggressive towards me, just stating that he would not leave until he has had me all naturally. I noticed that he seemed, all of a sudden, very drunk. His speech was turning incoherent. He was sober when we met, and we did not have any drinks at my place or as he was driving. I thought, oh my gosh, has he taken some kind of illegal substance? Him being high on something and me telling him to leave, he was about to exit the door in his birthday suit. What should I do? If I can't get him out, fully dressed, should I just leave the guy alone? Let him pass out and sleep over at my place until he was in his right mind again? I could call my closest friend and ask for a place to stay for the night. My mind was racing. But then I overcame my distress and decided that, at this point, it most likely would be better to just call the police. He wasn't fit to drive home anyways. The strange nude man seemed to act even stranger, not speaking anymore, just staring into oblivion and mumbling. I decided it's best if I make the call to police from outside. I told him to wait indoors, that I had to take the trash out, and then I called the local 911 operator. I told them I needed the police to take my trashy date out of my apartment. 2 policemen arrived in under 15 minutes. I explained the situation, and they asked me to wait downstairs, outdoors. It was chilly in October already after midnight. I heard the police going in, exchanging words, and then one of them came back out. We need an ambulance. Wait here, the policeman said. I started to get freaked out. What possibly could have happened in 15 minutes while I had been outside? The ambulance came, they run upstairs, and very shortly I started hearing a loud groaning and moaning. My date crying like an animal. I heard one nosy neighbor open their door and ask the paramedics what's going on. It's all under control, I heard the paramedic answer. After what felt like an eternity, one of the policemen came down and gave me a status report. Okay, so he had dangerously low blood sugar, hypoglycemia, as they say, and he had gone into insulin shock, but the paramedics have now resuscitated him successfully. He did hit his head, and there is a pool of blood on your floor." I was speechless. However, I managed to ask what I should tell the neighbors about the awful noise in the middle of the night. "Just tell him it was a medical emergency and that you saved his life." I had no idea. He had not told me that he had any health issues. I had never before seen someone go into insulin shock like that. As the paramedics were done, they walked him out of my building. He just waved goodbye and was again a bright and regular person. I climbed back up and started cleaning the blood off of my floor. I had some time to reflect on what had just happened. If I had left my apartment and left him staying there sleeping it off, as I initially considered, he would have died overnight. Some may be hoping that I never used Tinder again, but nah, I did. Just more responsibly. That is actually how I later found my now husband. And thank you to anyone listening. I hope that you found my story at least somewhat educational. There was a kid named Johnny that lived down the road from where I grew up, in the woods of Mid-Coast, Maine. Johnny was a grade older than me, but he was friends with my older sister, so he always treated me with respect. Although he loved my sister, he hated my older brother, and was at least neutral if not positive towards me. I even walked over to his house a handful of times in my early teens to smoke and play video games despite not knowing him all that well. His mom was nice and offered me snacks, but his dad seemed like a real hard-ass, barking criticisms of his son's lifestyle and general habits. One thing I did know about Johnny is that he was severely bipolar. However, he was correctly medicated, and it seemed like he had a pretty good grip on the disorder. The reason that Johnny and my sister knew each other was because he was dating one of my sister's best friends, who I'll refer to as M. Johnny and M had been dating for several years, but they were going through a rough patch, and eventually his intensity and possessive tendencies grew too much for her to handle. Despite Johnny's pleas and bargains for change, M left him. Johnny made numerous attempts to win M back over the next few weeks, claiming that they were meant to be together and that he loved her. But alas, she moved on with her life and started dating other people. I went to a party at M's house after they broke up, and she seemed like she was living her best life. In stark contrast, 1 week after the party, M was dead. The news reports claimed teenage girl found dead in home with no other details. The first reports speculated as to whether M might have fallen from her third-story balcony, as it was initially alleged to be a freak accident involving alcohol and gravity. Over the next few days, my sister and her peers heartbrokenly mourned the death of their friend. Among the most afflicted by the news of M's death was Johnny, uncontrollably sobbing in between long bouts of outraged swearing, culled by silent contemplation. It was apparent just how much Johnny loved M, my sister told me. My sister held Johnny as he wept, and vice versa. 2 days after the informal friend wake, Johnny's face appeared on the news. The headlines read, "Local Double Murder." It turns out that M's death was no accident. Police on the scene instantly clocked it as a horrific and gruesome murder scene where she had been mutilated with a large knife. The cops kept that information close to their vests while the investigation was pending, so as to not spark the culprit to react in fight or flight. During this multi-day silent investigation, Johnny's dad stopped showing up to work. When responsible parties came calling as to the whereabouts of Johnny's dad, his mother said he never came home after work a couple of nights prior. He probably finally took off for good like he always threatened, she explained away. It wasn't long before the police showed up at Johnny's door, pinning him as the main suspect in M's murder. What the police didn't expect to find was Johnny's father's body in the basement, slashed to shreds by a large knife. Turns out, Then after M broke up with Johnny, he stopped taking his meds and spiraled into a jealous rage that boiled for weeks, until he finally drove to her house in the middle of the night, stabbed her dead, threw her body off the balcony, and then proceeded to mutilate the body for a great deal of time. After killing M, Johnny drove home and loudly entered his house covered in blood with the knife tucked into his belt. He was evidently confronted by his awoken father in a blind fury. Johnny used the knife to end his father's criticisms once and for all. The mother came downstairs to find her husband dead at the hands of her blood-soaked son, and, in a panic, came up with a plan to help Johnny hide the man's body in the basement. Johnny was an only child that suffered from severe mental illness from a young age, which I believe is why his mother decided to become complicit in the hellish act, instead of immediately calling the authorities like she should have. Johnny was brought to trial on double murder charges, and he pled guilty. He received life in prison without the possibility of parole, given the brutal nature of the crimes. My sister was asked to voluntarily testify against Johnny, but declined out of fear. The day after Johnny had killed M and his dad with the same knife, he had kissed my sister on her cheek and cried in her arms. My sister will never fully overcome the fact that she could have so easily been victim number 3. You see, Johnny always had a crush on my sister, but she never reciprocated due to loyalty of her friend, M. So, for him to turn that evil jealous rage towards my sister would not have been a stretch. Luckily for my family, it did not turn out that way. I mentioned earlier that Johnny hated my older brother. One time at a party, Johnny ran up to me yelling, "Where's your brother? I'm gonna slit his effing throat." I told him that I didn't know where my brother was and brushed it off as drunken BS. But, in retrospect, I think Johnny was serious. Johnny is still in prison today with no hopes of release. I do still have friends that write happy birthday cards to Johnny once a year, but my sister is not one of those friends. I am now a veteran after 23 years in the Royal Navy here in the UK. In around the year 1999, I was invited with my young family to a barbecue by a coworker. I agreed, so I turned up the following Saturday with my wife, our 2 boys and daughter, taking some beers and food. The day went fine, drinks flowing, food and music was great, and the kids were all entertained, and were enjoying playing with the host's kids and many friends. At the back fence was a large green area, so most of the boys gravitated there to play some variation of soccer, chase, or tag. You get the idea. Eventually, everything wound down and people started heading off, until there were very few kids left. So the dads started stumbling around playing the same game with the boys left. We lived on the opposite side of the road, so there was no need to get a taxi or head home yet. This all seems normal, right? Well, around a month later, a news report broke about a serial killer who had preyed on young boys and who looked kinda familiar. Apparently, he'd been doing it for years and burying the bodies not just around the world, but along the motorway between the base and his hometown. He looked familiar because he was one of the last to leave the barbecue, and the first to join in the games with the boys. Luckily for my family, I suppose, he preferred 18 to 20-year-old boys that he could control and manipulate. My boys were only 4 and 7. He was actually convicted for 2, but they suspect that he had around 20 victims, 1 being a girl. And there were unsolved disappearances that coincided with his whereabouts and postings. So that, my friends, was this week's collection of Stalker encounters. encounters with people that are strange and stalky. Yeah. Maybe not stalky. None of them were described as being stalky, so I don't think I can use that. Anyways, stranger stories, stranger encounters, stranger stalker encounters. One of them, the second one, being a bit different than my normal stuff. That guy definitely had a medical emergency, and I'm glad that they were able to get him the help that he needed. And while I do understand their personal qualm with the fact that they almost left him there alone, they didn't. And I hope that that doesn't affect them or cause them grief or problems, because they didn't make that choice, and they did save his life by calling 911, so kudos to you for that. But honestly, these were all kind of terrifying. These people were very messed up. The Tinder match one was a problem in and of itself, but the other three were fairly intense. Murderers were in two of them, which is not a common thing in these stories, but damn, it happened. Anyways, terrifying stories. Hopefully you all enjoyed them and found them somewhat educational, edutainment, as I always say. You know what it means. They're interesting and they're good to enjoy, but hopefully you can keep yourself out of situations like this, because these were horrifying, and I would never want anyone to be in these situations. I don't know. I always say the same thing with these, and it still rings true. In my opinion, these are terrifying stories, and keeping people out of these situations is an important, not job, but not really side effect, but kind of a side effect to telling these stories. Like, it can help, I think. I think these can help. Anyway, hopefully you all enjoyed the stories, found them terrifying as I did. If you did, please do hit that like button on the video. That would be amazing. I'd appreciate that. You can also hit the subscribe button if you're new to the channel and liked what you heard and want more content like this. I post quite a bit. This week is a fairly packed week. We have content all week, minus one day, I believe. I think that's going to be Thursday, no video, I think. Tomorrow, whenever this video goes live. I don't know. It's a vacation week for Patience and I. We're doing stuff, so I'm getting as much work done as I can early, which leads me to my next next topic. What am I saying anymore? Which leads me to my next thing I need to say. That was my segue. If you want early access to my content, go to Patreon, down below, description, or hit the join button down below the video to get early access to content like this and other things depending on what you sign up for. You can also do a super thanks, which is just a tip to the channel. There's no reward I can give for that, but it is genuinely appreciated. You can also leave me a comment down below with your thoughts on the stories or how you're doing. Tell me how you're doing. I'd love to hear that. Yeah. Or you know what? What is your favorite kind of pizza? Tell me that in the conversation and whatever. The comments. What is wrong with my brain today, yo? Comments down below. Leave me your favorite pizza. Mine is I'm gonna get a lot of flack for this. Barbecue chicken with pineapple on it. Yeah. I'm gonna lose a lot of subs for that one. You can also listen to the podcast on other platforms such as Pandora, Amazon Music, Audible, Spotify is the big one. Listen on Spotify if you want to. Good stuff. Always good. Always fun. All that said, friends, I'm rambling. Hope you're having a beautiful week so far. Hope I see you again here very soon. Until then, remember, you are loved, you are valid, you are important, you are the best you that you can be. Do not forget it, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And until next time, my friends, much love, and of course, sleep well.